Curious on your thoughts after the season you had last year, and what were your expectations or hopes for this season coming, as you went into it?
Well, our season, like most people know, came down to the last match day, and I think my neighborhood can still hear me cheering at the 94th minute when Endo scored the winner against Cologne. So we knew we were going to lose a number of players. Orel Mangala, who drove the midfield, Sasha Kalajic, who scored us many goals up front, and Borna Sosa were the three guys that we thought we would lose. So we just assumed the club would be a lot different. And I think Sven Mislintat, who's he's the director of sport, in charge of getting players, said it perfectly. And I love this. Is such a German phrase, is 13th place is our first place. And you can't say that in any other, at least American sport, and not get fired immediately. But I think we're 12th place now. We'll talk about, what that looks like later. But our goal is to finish probably, let me put it this way. When we did on our podcast, a preview of the season, we kind of broke it down to the top 6, middle 6, and the bottom 6. Our goal was to be somewhere in the top of the last 6. So somewhere around that 12, 13. I think we've got the talent to do it. We're running into the same issues we ran into last year. And then you see clubs like Bremen and Schalke who are just coming up, and you're like, well, they might struggle, but they're doing all right. So.
Yeah, I think 13th would probably be our first place as well this season, given everything. I think Richard and I have been talking about is my only goal for our season this year was to stay up and try to, reestablish a foothold in the Bundesliga and not get into some sort of yo-yo situation. Obviously, the financial realities in the background for Schalke make that especially important as well. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, what I want to ask you guys is I think being a Schalke supporter and a Stuttgart supporter is somewhat similar in that we come from very history-rich clubs who have had a lot of success in your guys' case internationally, in our case domestically. And I think it's really difficult for clubs like ours to wrap our heads around this new reality that we may be, like you said, more of in the yo-yo situation than we want to admit, just because based on our history and our tradition. So when you guys, that's what I kind of was interested about you guys, when you headed back up to the first league, did you have aspirations of immediately finishing the top 9, or were you just like, listen?
I mean, Richard may be different than me because Richard likes to project us to finish first every season, no matter what happens historically. But like I said, for me, my only goal, like if we stayed up, that was a successful season for me. There's a lot of squad overhaul last year, obviously going into the second division, a lot of squad overhaul again. This year we've lost Malik Chow now, in addition to Ozan Kabak and Ida Kura. Kabak obviously not really involved last season as much, but two mainstays at center back for us on the way out. So there's definitely issues there, and I think we have a good enough squad to stay up. But I think we all need to be very realistic about the situation the club's in at the moment, the financial constraints that are in play, and like I said, the most important thing for us is just to remain in the Bundesliga, try to establish a foothold, and hopefully we can fight our way back up to the higher places of the table. But it's a brave new world at this point. This is not the situation we were in 10 years ago.
And I'm no fool either. I'm not going to go and predict we're going to win the Bundesliga again. But my goal was, like Jack says, just to stay in the league. If we finish somewhere mid-table, that's a fantastic year, honestly, considering where we came from. But to stay in the league and hopefully not be in a relegation battle at all, that's the goal. Anything more is a cherry on top. Anything less is the yo-yo you mentioned. So it's I don't know. So do you feel, because you guys had a little bit of yo-yo yourself, do you feel now that you're kind of got a staple hold in the Bundesliga, or are you still worried about that yo-yo effect?
I'm crazy scared of this. It's funny. It's when I had my first child, we were relegated. And then we came back up. And then I had my second child, and we were relegated again. And I told my wife, it's like, listen, we can no longer, for the sake of Germany and Stuttgart, we can no longer have children. And look at me. She was okay with that. But it was weird because 2 years ago when we came up, the year that you guys were being relegated, we were everybody's darling. Everybody loved, watching Silas and watching Kalajic and Borna Sosa and Gregor Kobel. The first half of the season, we were playing really well. And then the second half of the season, I think people figured us out a little bit. We had some injuries. And then last season, while you guys were in the Zweite Liga, we were just a disaster. And we lost, I think it was the second most players due to COVID and to injury in the entire Bundesliga. And so you were never able to put your thumb on what is it that is not letting us have success. And so you're like, well, I'm excited for this season. We survived by the skin of our teeth. And it's almost the same thing over again. The late transfer window led to some late, Kalajic leaving late, some new players coming in. So you don't really know where the club's at. And I think that's the most frustrating thing as the Stuttgart supporters. We love the youth that we have. We love the direction that we're taking. But because of the injuries and because of the COVID and because of the late transfer, we've never been able to really truly figure out what this club is like. And so going into a match against Schalke, who is a game that most Stuttgart supporters thought that we could get 3 points out of, you're still really nervous because you don't know what your club has, because the last 18 months, it's just been all over the board.
So talk to us briefly, if you can. You don't have to get too granular here, but just thoughts on Moderato in general as a manager, because I know that, from the American perspective, there's a lot of interest. Obviously, he's lived in Germany for quite some time consistently, but born in New Jersey. There's that, sort of dual national aspect to it, or whatever you want to say. What can you tell us about the way he likes to set up his team, the things he's trying to do, and sort of your general impressions of him so far? Not on the bench this past weekend due to suspension. We saw Sven Mislintat jump up and get involved at one point pretty angrily about a Drexler tackle. But yeah, go ahead.
It's not a Stuttgart game unless somebody gets a red card and gets booted out. So we're just going to start next week down 10 and let Bayern, go at it.
Maybe we'll get one back during the course of the match. You start with 10, you'll get one on it.
I know. It works so far. I would say this. I think Stuttgart supporters, by and large, are in love with Pellegrino, Moderato, and Sven Mislintat. We love that they're playing youth. We love that they let the kids make mistakes. As a Stuttgart supporter, we've gone through a number of managers over my fandom over the last decade. And now Pellegrino is the fourth most tenured manager in the Bundesliga. And when you tell a Stuttgart supporter that, it blows their mind, because we go through managers like crazy. The team has been very analytical, and the team has been very his background is mathematics. And the knock on him has been kind of passion and in-game changes. But we've seen that definitely change this season. And I think it's a nice kind of when you let a manager or a coach actually grow, you will see bumps in the road, but you'll see improvement. And that's what we're seeing with Pellegrino, Moderato. This goes back to what I said earlier, is because of the injuries and because of the late transfer, I don't think we have a full picture of exactly what Pellegrino, Moderato can do, because even though he's got a really talented roster, which most Stuttgart supporters would believe, it seems like he's always hamstrung by a silly red card or COVID or an injury. And this may sound like an excuse, and maybe it is, but he plays very aggressive football. We give up about 1.5 goals every game while he's been manager, so we're going to go for it. But we usually score a lot of goals, and when we were having success early, that's what was happening. But over the last 20 matches or so, whether it's bad luck, bad finishing, we haven't been able to get those goals in. But by and large, you ask anybody who's wearing a Bruce string, the red stripe, we love Reno, we love Sven. We just need some results. And at the end of the day, if we can just get a couple results, that's why the Bremen match was hurt so much, because if we're sitting with 6 points or 8 points, the conversation is completely different than what it is right now. So we love Reno. We just want to get some results. Let me flip it back to you guys. I mean, there was rumors going into the match against us that if you guys got 0 points out of that you might be looking for a new manager already.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ethan at Tedesco time would be happy with that. I think he has his whole thing targeted already in terms of the date, but